So this is Baruch Fleischman, and I'm back here at the Likutei MAHARAN, Sefer Likutei MAHARAN, with a pirush called the SEFAT HANACHAL. I think that in his time, Rav SCHICK was very well known in the Northeast and many places for the little books that he had printed. He was always writing, never stopped writing. He didn't spend a lot of time with the Chassidim. He wrote. He continuously wrote. And here we have an explanation of the Likutei MAHARAN, and we're going to get into it today, where we're talking about the tithe of the lust for money. And what's so interesting about this is that we live in a country where the lust for money is glorified. So the problem is that everybody needs money, especially in the United States, where you need, if you're going to send your children to Jewish schools, you're going to need to pay tuition. And if you have a bunch of children, it could add up to a lot of money. And even when you get older, you have grandchildren, they need help too, because the family spreads out. In this country, money is very important. The question is, what's the separation between the lust for money and the need for money? So here we have a country where we can make money. Many people do. And that's supposed to be the idea. Let's see what this says, though. This is the holy Rebbe of BRESLOV, Rabbi NACHMAN Befege, and this pirush by ELIEZER, SHLOMO, SCHICK. So let's come over here and let's read. Right now we're going to be reading just the SEFAT HANACHAL. SEFAT HANACHAL, if you don't know, it means at the banks of the, SEFAT means really the lip of the brook, of the flowing stream, of the pure water. Let's see what he says here. V'shvil zerav mamon im osiyose b'gematria come. So you said to take the word mammon, add the 4 letters onto it, you'd come. Now this is a technique that is very common in Kabbalah. I'm not sure that I understand how you could do it, or it may be much simpler than I think. Most of the things I didn't understand are really much simpler than the way I try to look at it. But anyway, let's say gematria come, which is another gematria of 140. What is 140? He says it's the concept of the Keneged Kam, calling the 140 voices. Shechinah tzavachas, that the Shechinah cries out. She cries with 140 voices. Kalani meroshi, she cries out from her head. Cries Kalani mizroi, from my arms. Al elu hanoiflim, and what is she crying about? Al elu hanoiflim b'taivas mammon, those people who fall into the lust for money. Shehem avodas alilim, which is the service of false gods. Kolulim b'avodas zara, which is part of idolatry. The idolatry that is found by the Shavim Umos, by the 70 nations. Like we say here, we're in the United States of America, where money, the big buck, is the most important thing. Balkain Haim Kom Kolim, so therefore they become to be 140 different voices. Shem Shtei Pamim Ayin, which is the same thing as 2 times 70. What's 2 times 70? Comes to 140, which is Kom, that Kom voices. He says, Shechinah tzavachas, because the Shechinah cries out. Tzavachas hakalim b'kafulim, she sounds a double, she has a, I don't know what you would say, a double sound comes out of her. Bechinas kalanim erosha kalanim izroi. So the voice coming from 2 different places. Reading on, we're reading just the SEFAT HANACHAL on Likutei MAHARAN. And we're going on. This is the concept of double voices. Hainu shnei pamim ayin, that is, he says it's also 2 times the letter ayin. Now, ayin by itself is the number 130. So what is exactly? He says that ayin kolim, there are shnei pamim ayin, which is 70, comes to kam, 140. And this is what the Shechinah cries out on those who have fallen into the lust for money. Such as idolatry, which incorporates within it kol avodas zaros, all the different kinds of idolatry, of the 70 umos. Now he said 70 voices doubled. And we have the concept of the nations of the world are 70. Behind the ke'echad noifel l'taivas mammon, kasha echad noifel l'taivas mammon. When an individual falls into the lust for money, he needs the car, he needs the suit, he needs the woman, he needs all of these things take money. He still makes money into the whole, everything, he uses it for everything, and he thinks that everything is in his hands to be able to make everything happen. Because a person says in his heart, and we say this said often about the Israeli army after the 6-Day War, after the 73 war, not so they were a lot more sober in what they're going to think now. He says, V'amarta bilvavi, where he says, a person says in his heart, Kochi, my own strength, v'otzim yadin, the power of my hand. Also they made all this bounty that I have achieved because I am so great. So she thunders out and she begins to scream. Pamayim ayin kolim, 2 times 70 voices. Pam nenega kalonde beroshi. V'pam nenega kalonde bezroi. So one according to different places. Yesh b'nei adam shechoshvim sheyesh lechem rosh tov. There are people who think that they have a good head. V'zecha v'masha hevi lechem as a mammon. And that is what brings them the money. Now look at the metaphor he says, Pam neged kalani meroshi. It's my mind, he says. Pam neged kalani mizroe, and sometimes with my hands. That's what he means by that. This is that I'm crying out for my head. You're putting me down, you're disgracing me. Always looking for the word in English for mavaze. So it's as if your panasa can't come to you. Because sheyesh elacha rosh tov, because you have a good head. So therefore there are also people who think she'al yadechem, through their own hands, bekoch atzman, that is, that whatever they create something. But on this thought, that when people start to think like this, that there's really something special about them. This is what the Shechinah begins to cry out about. What does she say? That my voice is coming out of my arms. So you're putting me down, you're disgracing me. Just think because you got good hands, you can make things. And that's what she cries out when she says, the voice are coming from my head. Keneged bechinas chachma sheberoshes, is that we have minds. Kalanim is roe. Then comes back and says, and my voice comes out from my hands. Keneged bechinas v'otzim yadi, which is the concept of the power of my own hand. U'ba'emes adam sarek lutzok ayin call him. So the truth is, a man really has to cry out 70 different voices. Now, I'm not sure what he means. Call him, is a voice is the right word for that? It means sounds is the right back. But it means crying out. And why does he need to do that? In order to refine his thinking power. Veleda. Shaparnasasa taluya bo yisbarach. Everything that he has is really given to him. It all depends on Hashem Yisbarach. But then after you realize that everything is really the origin of everything in the Panemius, in the very beginning of whatever happens, and whatever thought that you have, comes from him. But then you have to turn around to bring actually the bracha to the person. And he should be able to receive the bracha without having the lust for it, like he thinks he can do so much with it. I have to say that, as far as myself is concerned, I've been in business a long time, that if you're having success, it's very, very difficult to manage your success without giving into time. But personally, I have a wonderful wife. She can always bring me down to earth. This is what the rabbi says. Kashin, difficult. What does that mean? Hard. Hard to make a living is twice as hard as a woman giving birth. Because we say like this, is before a woman gives birth, she cries out 70 different voices. She says 70 v'hacha yesh kam kolim. But here, in the crying out about the taivas of the lust that we have for money and material things, and to be admired by other people, to think, oh, this guy's a rich guy. Shehem shtei pamim ayin, which is 2 times 70, because those lusts for money takes 140, twice 70. So he says, so he's comparing, this is actually the quote, this is a quote from the Rav. So the Rav says, that is Rabbi Nachman says, that there's a cry out of the Shechinah from 140 voices. When a woman gives birth, there's a metaphor that she cries out 70, 2 times, this is just 170 on the pain of birth. Why is it necessary for 70 different voices? 70 call, maybe it means 70 calls out. Misha Nova B'Taivas Mammon. So a person has to get into this concept of 70 if he's a person that fell into lust for money. Ki Beleda, at birth, he says, at the process of, this is a metaphor, but these 70 different voices. I'm not sure exactly what it means. I haven't listened that carefully to the sounds a woman makes. So I don't know whether 70 is metaphoric, because it has something to do with Bina, I'm not sure. Or motherhood, which is giving birth, not sure. So the rabbis say that actually making a living is twice as hard as a woman giving birth. So then you have to have 2 times 70. Because in order to get into something, you see this very common with young men. It was true of me for sure, and many of my friends too. They didn't have a profession. They didn't go and get a profession. And even those who do go and get a profession, starting in that profession can be very difficult. And it might have cost you a lot of money to get the education that you need. So it could be very hard to get started. It's the same thing as giving birth. Before he makes a living, he hasn't got anything. Let me see if I can move this up a little bit. So and then starts the flow of parnasa. This is actually a creation, he says. This is the concept of making something out of nothing. Originally you had nothing at all, but now you're working and you're being able to get the flow of what you need in order to sustain you and your family in this world. Yesh ma'ayin komo later. So therefore, you see, it's like giving birth. There was no baby before, but now here it is. Shigam came yesh ma'ayin, because also we have something that came out of nothing. Ach machmeshach parnasa bola adam kasha kiflaim kayoleda. But we says that since we know that the parnas of a person is double hard than giving birth, so he has to have double 70 voices. Mammon, which is the same gematria. Now he's saying like this, is that the mitzvah, by crying out these 140 voices, is the gematria of Mammon. Now let's look at Mammon, but you have to add the 4 letters. Mammon is 80, 86, 136. Add the 4 letters and you get the 140. So I've said this before and I keep saying it, I'm looking for the understanding of how it is that you can add it up to make everything become equal. Obviously, they do become equal, but it's a technique. Ki after the chasig mammon, because it's impossible to get money. Only if you want to know the derech to make a living, by crying out to Hashem Yisbarach. Vaz nishpal alav das v'seichel, then will flow onto that person, das v'seichel, v'chadashu or eloki, because this das, understand, it is a muach coming from a very pneumistic place, very inside, very close to the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. Light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu within it. Shuhu or eloki, mischafek achar kach, the shefa gashmi, that comes, it has to come, that light, which is spiritual only, but then after that it becomes transformed into actual physical wealth. Now let me see what I got. I'm going to stop this for a second because I just want to look ahead. And yeah, so let's read the last little part. So the last little part says like this: Fa'akshav yalbish es hasagas b'maimer. So now we're going to see how he is clothing this idea in a mimer. And he says like the V'zehu v'altihi rasha b'fnei atzmecha. Do not become an evil person by yourself. Now what does that mean? Bifnei. What does bifnei mean? Zeh b'chinas panim b'pnei. So translate, the pnei means face. So he said, v'altihi rasha b'pnei atzmecha, in your own face, in your own eyes. So maybe that means b'pnei. Because looking at yourself as if you're somebody special, there's something special about you. That's actually the face of the other side looking at you. And why does he get like that? Look at the clothes I am wearing. Look at the car I drive. Look at the house, my wife, the children were so great. He said this all comes from the taivas of mama. She'ein ma'amin b'HaKodesh Baruch Hu, the person doesn't believe in the Kodesh Baruch Hu, shuhu hazan of farnes, because it is a Kodesh Baruch Hu that brings all the shefa. He's the one that feeds you and gives you a living. Hu choshev koichi, choshev v'otzin yadeh, but the person is thinking that it's me, and the otzim comes of v'otzim yadeh, and with the power of my hand, also the SHLOMO lezeh. So this itself, I don't know, this atzmecha, you yourself. When you say you yourself, I did it. Lashon otzim yadim is the concept, the language of the power of my own ability, my own hand. Haino es a rishos shala adam makirim b'fon of daika. Now he says something else. So Rav, that's a quote from the Rebbe. So now the Rav Shik writes like this: Haino es a rishos shall adam mekirim b'fon of daika, that a person's evil intentions can be recognized on his face. That's what he says means on the face. Ki'im, because if that if cholek im anpin, let's say I'm going to have it on the table. Im cholek im anpin chashukim, if a person has a face that always looks depressed, marsh chara, he's always worrying, he has deep depression. Siman shuhu rachok me'amuna, it's a sign that the person is very far from faith. V'choshesh yesh kam teva, and he thinks that everything is nature, it's natural, mikro l'mazel, it's something that just happens, and man's got good luck. Therefore, when a person is struggling, or he's working hard to make a living, and he doesn't get it, in other words, not working out for him, that person will fall into tremendous depression, failing. Anfing chashuk, in the dark face. Think about this society that we live in, because everybody doesn't make a big living. It's just a chance to be able to do it. But since everybody's in the race, and you can't finish the race. The person goes around in bitterness. He complains about this and that and fights. This is the their idols are made out of silver and gold. What you seek for is silver and gold. Something that people can make. Now, I think I voted for Donald Trump, and I hope everything works out. Bless him, but he's a man who puts gold on everything. We'll talk about money. Because if a person thinks that all of this gold and silver that he's collected are really something that he got by himself. He doesn't need anybody else. As ha'atzvos monachos al panav, you see now depression, sadness starts to fall into this person's face. And he says, Shezecha b'mashem masker chatana, so this is what the Tana is warning about. Al tehi rasha b'pnei atzmecha. Don't be a rasha on your own face. B'pnei daika, we means on the face specifically. Hainu, shemakirim al hapanim shalacha, because it now could be recognized on your face. Sha'ata male atzvos v'kushos v'sveikus alav yisbarach, that you are full of sadness, questions about God. This is what has God did that to me? You know, if there was a God, this wouldn't happen. V'kushos v'sveikus alav yisbarach, on his holy self. This is Baruch Fleischman. Went a little longer than I wanted to, but this is the Likutei Maharan with the Pirush of the Sfas HANACHAL from the very holy. I knew this man personally, Rabbi Rav ELIEZER SHLOMO SCHICK.